Welcome again, everyone. Right. So when you daydream, what do you daydream about? Horses. Retirement. So when I daydream, I daydream about life being simple. Simple, not complicated. Yeah, instead I have emails to answer. I have schedules to organize with 5 kids. If you saw our Google Calendar, it's terrifying. There's relationships to upkeep and manage. There's decisions to make. There's problems to solve. Life is complicated, and it's complex. When I daydream, I think about what it was like BC, before children. But instead, we have school, we have family, we have jobs, we have relationships, we have adulting. And it's just complicated, right? And then there's times when it gets extra, when the job becomes really difficult, or when we're unemployed or underemployed. If we have children that are wandering and making decisions that are destructive, on our own wandering hearts. And I think there's times when I just feel so overwhelmed. I feel overwhelmed, and so sometimes I go to escape. And now escape for me looks like picking up a novel that I really like. Just like, I'm just going to spend hours and hours and hours reading today, so I don't have to deal with it. Or it can be movies or sports for me is another thing. Let me just watch some sports and just unplug and let me escape. And the problem with that is I escape sometimes from the relationships of the people around me. Sometimes when I'm overwhelmed, I don't try to escape. I try to control. I say, well, if I just make this decision and organize this and organize this and organize this, then maybe I won't feel so overwhelmed. And sometimes when I'm overwhelmed, I just feel alone. Are we alone in this battle? Does it all depend on us? I have good news. In the midst of our mental chaos, God is calling us to something better. Starting today a series on Joshua. Okay? We're going to be telling a lot of stories and asking God to speak. Now, when we read stories in the Bible, there's heroes, there's mistakes, there's lessons. And these stories are supposed to guide us and shape us. And the stories of the Bible, the narrative, the Bible is a huge chunk of stories and narratives, but they're ambiguous. They're not like Aesop's fables, where it's like, oh yeah, this definitely has an obvious fable there, an obvious lesson. They take thought and meditation, and they're ambiguous on purpose to make us stop and wonder, and they're mysterious because God is involved. But there is one big reality that all these stories have, and that they all point us to Jesus. Because the Bible is one unified story that points to Jesus. So we're going to tell a story today. Let me pray. God, today, would you speak to us? Would you speak through me? And help us see our helplessness, our weakness, and our confusion, and help us see you in the middle of it. Amen. Our story today about Joshua is the first time Joshua appears in the Bible, which is in the book of Exodus. Exodus chapter 17, if you want to open your Bibles to that, I could tell you what page it is in my Bible, but that really won't help you. And I forgot to look on the Pew Bibles. But if you have a phone or a Bible with you, Exodus, Genesis, Exodus, if you've hit the book of table of contents, you've gone too far. That was a joke. You're supposed to laugh. Sorry. Exodus 17. The setup is that they've come out of Egypt. God has done miraculous things and parted the Red Sea, and they've come out, and then they're wandering in the wilderness, and they're like, we have nothing to eat, so God gives them manna and quail, and they say, we have nothing to drink, and so God gives them water from a rock, and then we sit here in chapter 17, verse 8. Then Amalek came and fought with Israel at Rephidim. Amalek is a relative of Esau. So Jacob and Esau were children of Isaac, children of Abraham. So these are relatives they're cousins to Israel. And they live in the Sinai Peninsula. And they've come and attacked. And they've taken them from behind, where they attacked Israel from behind. Sorry. So Rephidim is this place where they have no water. And this will matter in a moment. The people quarreled with Moses and said, "Give us water in this place, Rephidim." And Moses said, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test the Lord?" But the people thirsted there for water, and the people grumbled against Moses, said, "Why did you bring us up from Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst?" This is the context. These people are saying, "Moses, it's your fault. And we don't want you anymore. We don't like you. You've led us out into this place to die of thirst." And so the Bible tells us in chapter 17 that God said, "Okay, I'm here with you. Take your staff." Remember the staff? "Take your staff and strike the rock, and out of that will flow water." So when we hear Rephidim, we're like, okay, the place where they're quarreling, and then they're coming attacked. Now, the book of Deuteronomy, when recounting this, says the Amalekites came from behind and started taking out stragglers. Okay, so imagine hundreds of thousands of people walking through the desert. Who are the ones farthest behind? The old, the weak, probably children who just can't walk, nursing mothers. The Amalekites come and they start to pick them off and pick them off and pick them off. This is not a good thing for Israel, right? And so what's the plan? Then Amalek came and fought with Israel at Rephidim. So Moses said to Joshua, this is the first time Joshua appears in the Bible, "Choose for us men and go out and fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand." So Joshua did as Moses told him and fought with Amalek, while Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. Joshua is told, "Find an army." And Joshua says, "There's no warriors here." They've been slaves, not trained for war. Do they have weapons? Probably not, unless they somehow stole them from the Egyptians or took. This is not a good situation. There's no one trained for this, no one prepared for this, and Joshua is put in this situation. All right, so you're going to go down into the valley, and you fight. So find some men and fight. And I'm going to go up. So you go down, I go up. Ah, dang it, man. Who gets that job? You get to go down into the fray. And you get to go down to try to defeat these raiders who are coming and killing the people. So the next day, Joshua gets up and he says, "All right, well, this is who I've got." And you enter into battle. Now, battle is confusing. Battle in that time is hand to hand. And you don't get a big picture of anything. You're there in the middle of it. And you're doing your best to survive. And this battle in particular is very confusing. Because Joshua's like, sometimes we're winning and we're pushing them back and we're making it. And sometimes they're getting us. And they're pushing us back and we're losing. But isn't that real life? Haven't you felt that in life before where it's up and down? Where it's like, yeah, 2 step forwards, 2 step back. 1 step forward, 3 steps back. We have that where we have good weeks, we have bad weeks. We have good days and we have bad days. We have days where it's just like there are just too many decisions to make right now, and I have decision fatigue. And I feel that overwhelmed. We are in a battle. The reason we're going into Joshua is because we've been talking about spiritual battle, and Joshua is a great example of how to live by faith in the midst of this. One of the realities of the battles that we're in right now is that we're not home yet, okay? Sorry, I skipped ahead a bit. We're not home yet, okay? We're in Babylon, okay? Now this battle that we're in Babylon is different than the battle that the Israelites have seen before. Because the battle the Israelites have seen before from Exodus was God fights for us, right? Moses said to the people, "Fear." This was at the Red Sea, like standing there. "Fear not. Stand firm and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will work for you today. The Egyptians you see today, you'll never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You only have to be silent." Or that's what happened at the Red Sea. God is going to do all the work. God's going to just do it. And that's what salvation is like. God does all the work. But then he says, you're in a real battle in your real life, doesn't he? And he doesn't say, I'm just going to do it for you. He says, you go engage, right? And that's where Joshua is sitting here. Joshua's in where we are, where we have things we have to do. Here's the deepest battle that we experience right now. We're not home. We're not home. We're living in Babylon. The Bible talks about Christians as living as exiles in the world. An exile is someone who has been cast out and doesn't live where home is. And this battle is the world, the flesh, and the devil. Now, we are living in the world, but we are not to be of the world. So when we moved to Davis about 10 years ago, I began to try to discern, what is this particular Babylon like? I was living in the Babylon called Flagstaff, and that's a different Babylon. It's Babylon in a different way than Davis's Babylon. Does that make sense? It's a different culture. There's different spiritual strongholds. There's different realities that are just antagonistic towards God. Davis is a fascinating Babylon. Here's how I describe Davis. It's the local epicenter of privileged, progressive utopia. Privileged, progressive utopia is the desire of Davis. And it's hard. And there's this push and push and push away from honoring God. And I'm going to pick one thing to talk about a little bit, and that's the battle over love. And what is love? The argument of culture is that love is a personal choice. And whatever you want, whatever you desire, that's fine. And in modern culture, there's a reality of fast food sexuality. It's cheap, it's easy, and it's ultimately unfulfilling. I don't know if you've experienced with fast food. You eat it, and then you're like, I didn't really want to do that. But that's what our culture is saying. There's a low cost and a low commitment, and then people complain about the low benefit. That sexuality is just something that's like, yeah, just have a sexual experience and don't worry about it. The concept of let's have a lifelong monogamous relationship between a man and a woman, that's a foreign language in modern culture. There's this battle over love. And the progressive thought is love is accepting people just as they are without possibly disagreeing with them. And that feels right to most people from progressive places. Just let people live their lives, and it doesn't matter how are we to judge anyone. It's June. And if you drive around downtown Davis, what do you see? You see bicycles, yeah. Yeah, the rainbow sidewalks, right? And they say this is what love is. Love is acceptance without any possibility of disagreement. Now, if you're from a conservative place, in a conservative Babylon, the culture basically works, I will accept you if you do right. If you do all the right things, and if you obey all the cultural rules, I will accept you. And if you don't, then I will disassociate from you. And that's kind of how, in general, conservative cultures work. You do right, you get accepted. You do wrong, you get outcast. And I'm not talking about just sexuality, I'm talking about everything. It's kind of how conservative culture kind of works. Now, progressive culture actually works that way too, but what's right and wrong have different definitions. My point is this. Biblical love is more complicated than that. And it takes more work than that. And it's a battle to decide to love biblically, where you have acceptance and truth, where you have real conversations and real relationships. And what I mean by acceptance is, yeah, I'll have dinner with you. I'll consider you my friend, even if I disagree with you. That is not normal in our culture right now, and that's a battle. And it's a battle as confusing as what Joshua was in. I'll be honest, most of my friends in Davis, not Christians at all. Like I know very few Christians kind of out in Davis, but these are people I play ultimate frisbee with, that I play soccer with, that I coach with. These are people in my neighborhood. And if I said, well, I'm only going to have you over for a barbecue if I agree with you, I would never have anyone over for a barbecue. Biblical love draws near no matter what. There's no caveats to love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus said, love your neighbor. Unless they're Muslim. Unless they're Buddhist. Unless they're secular. Unless they're LGBTQ. Then you don't have to worry about it. That's not what he said. That's not what he said. He said, love your neighbor. And that's complicated. It's complicated, right? Because you're like, okay, I love this person, but they're living this kind of way. They believe this way. They do these things. And you're like, yeah, they do. That's not what Jesus said, love your neighbor if. He said, love your neighbor. Now, love does speak to our neighbor as well. My point is this. It's complicated. And it can feel very overwhelming. Living as an exile in Babylon means that we have to be gentle as doves and wise as serpents. That's what living this way means. By the way, there's a lot more examples. Homelessness. A little bit complicated, isn't it? Immigration. Immigrants. The AIDS crisis in Africa, which has gotten ridiculously worse in the last 3 months as federal funding has been completely cut off. And millions of people are going to die. The foster care system, pretty complicated. The reality of sex trafficking in Sacramento, which is a big hotspot for sex trafficking in Sacramento. Reaching unreached and unengaged people in the USA and around the world. Different cultures and cities in and around Yolo County without good churches. These are complicated realities. And what do you want to do? You just want to escape? I think we do sometimes. I think we say, well, I'm not facing it right here, right now, and so I'm just going to check out. I don't think Jesus wants us to check out and say, those are complicated, so I don't want to enter in. I don't think there's simple answers to any of these things, by the way. Any of these things. I think it takes a real wisdom. But as believers and as this church, I think that's what we're called to. I think we're called to be in the battle and take up the sword of truth along with the rest of the armor and go forward to say, isn't God the one who's necessary to solve all those problems, to enter into all those situations? So how do we possibly do that? How do we possibly say, okay, dang it, Jeremiah, you just brought up a lot more complication. I was already dealing with it. My life is already deeply complicated. Here's where this story can help. This story is a sign. This story is a symbol and a call to us to do what Joshua did. When we're in the middle of it and we're confused, look up. Where was Moses? Whenever Moses held up his hand with the staff in it, I wish I had a staff. This would have been so much cooler. Anyway, if anyone has a nice shepherd staff or something, I'd love it. Whenever Moses held up his hand, Israel prevailed. Whenever he lowered his hand, Amalek prevailed. I kind of want to try this, but why don't you try to raise your hand for 5 minutes? We're not going to do that. This battle started in the morning, and Moses, with staff in hand, is like, I'm doing okay. You try just a water bottle, 16 ounces, or whatever it is. It starts getting heavy. But Moses, if you raise your hand, will win. But, it's getting heavy. And he starts to lower his hand. And Amalek starts to win. Joshua's down there, and he's like, how am I supposed to win this battle? How am I possibly supposed to win when actually there's a one-to-one correlation between what's happening on the mountain and my success? And I have no control over whether I'm winning this battle. And doesn't it feel like that? And yet, what does Joshua have to do? He has to decide to look up. And he decides to look up, and he makes this part of his whole lifestyle. The reason the title is this, the foundation of faith and worshiping warrior, is because Joshua is absolutely transformed by this reality. And I know that because later in the book of Deuteronomy, it says this about him, or in Exodus. When they make the tabernacle the meeting place of God. Now, Moses used to take up a tent and pitch it outside the camp, far off from the camp, and he called it the tent of meeting. And everyone who sought the Lord would go out to the tent of meeting, which was outside the camp. Thus, the Lord used to speak to Moses face to face as a man speaks to his friend. And Moses turned again into the camp. His assistant Joshua, the son of Nun, a young man, would not depart from the tent. Moses would go in, meet with God, and then leave. Where was Joshua? He stayed. He stayed. And this becomes the foundation of his life: worship and prayer. I want to tell you something. You will never rise in God's power above your life of prayer. You will never rise in God's power above your life of prayer. It is foundational that when you're in the middle of chaos, look up. Fight for seeing God working. Fight to live by faith, not by sight, not by what you see around you, but on what is happening in the heavenlies. You have to fight for that like Joshua. There's a reality, too, that sometimes it's not just what Joshua has experienced, but also what Moses is experiencing, right? Because he had to hold up his hand, Israel prevailed. Whenever he lowered his hand, Amalek prevailed, and he got tired. Because life isn't just confusing and chaotic, it's just tiring. I don't know about you, but when I'm tired, I don't do as well in my life. Moses was hurting. He was 80 years old at this point. He's 80, holding up this staff, right? He had to grow in understanding, I'm weak. He was weak. Right? He was just feeling the weakness of his life. And he had to do something different. In his weakness, he had to grow. And he had to look to God. Okay. Moses' hands grew weary. So what'd they do? They had him sit down. Sometimes, honestly, the most natural solutions to life are in God's creation. Just sit down. But how many times do we just say, nope, I have to push through. I don't have time to sit down. I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to have any kind of rest. I don't have time, because I'm so busy and so prideful that I can't just stop. Now, I'm not talking about being at work where you have like task. When you get home, you just keep doing it, and it becomes a mentality of, I never stop, because I always have something more to do. Do you ever just rest? Honestly, right now, 8 o'clock at night, just go outside and sit. It's the cool of the day where the Lord walks among the garden and the wind of the day comes up. Now, praise God, we're not in Merced where I grew up, because there's no Delta breeze down there, but we live in the good land where we have the Delta breeze. You know? Yeah, most of the time. In the days where we don't, it's like, ooh, just go back inside. But there's a pattern of life in the chaos and in the tiredness. You work, you pray, you rest, and you play. You work, you pray, you rest, and you play. We have to know our limitations, and sometimes you just need a rock to sit on. You just need to get a rock and sit there and worship and pray. When you feel emotional and overwhelmed, take 5 minutes not to just flip on your phone and scroll, but to put it away and connect with God. And it's hard to do it because our minds have been rewired to never do it. Recognize reality and pray. And we need to grow in realizing I have limitations, and that's okay. What else did Moses do? He looked down at the stone, and he looked to his sides, and he saw Aaron, and he saw her. What were they doing? They were holding up his arms. God has given us natural resources for when we're tired, and he's also given us friendship. And my hope is that you have good friends, that you have people in your life that can come to you and say, how are you doing? And to really mean it. I think communities would so radically be transformed if people asked 2 questions of each other and meant them. How are you doing? How can I pray for you? What if you just started to ask people that? If someone asked you that, wouldn't it be water to your soul? It would be to mine. I'm weak. And my life has been easy and difficult, like everyone's. There have been times where I've had friends like that. There have been times where I'm like, I need to go to Christian counseling. Someone who can really dig into the Word with me and help me understand God more clearly because I'm just missing it. I've had that. It's not this weakness that you're like, I'm going to reject all weakness. No, we need to press into our weakness and be like Moses, who said, Aaron, come up with me. When I'm in chaos, I need to look up and see God working. When I'm exhausted, I need to look around and see the world and see my friends. But when I look inward, I'm pretty bad at being a good human. When Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself, when he says, turn the other cheek, when he says, if someone asks for your cloak, don't give them that, give them the shirt off your back as well. When it says, in your anger, do not sin. Love God with all of your heart, mind, soul, and strength. When I look inward, I say, I have a failure that's so deep. And this is where the story points to Jesus. Jesus said this, you search the scriptures because you think that in them you have eternal life, but they bear witness about me. In Luke, he says, this is the very end, at the beginning of the Moses and the prophets, Jesus interpreted to them all the scriptures concerning himself. Jesus said to his disciples after the resurrection, these are the words I spoke to you when I was with you, that everything written about me in the law of Moses and the prophets and the Psalms must be fulfilled. Then he opened their minds to understand the scriptures. The whole Bible points to Jesus. And so does this story. Because this story says God is the hero. God is the victor. We are the weak people in the story. God is strong. After Moses lifted his hands finally with help and Joshua prevailed, the Lord said to Moses, "Write this as a memorial in the book and recite it in the ears of Joshua, that I will utterly blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven." We'll get to that later. Moses built an altar and called the name of it, "The Lord is my banner," saying, "A hand upon the throne of the Lord, and the Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation." It was not Moses and Aaron and Hur who won the victory because they raised up the staff. It's not some magical staff. It's the reality of God. It's a sign. It's a pointer. God is the one who is fighting this battle. This is a ridiculous military strategy. It's the dumbest thing ever. Have an 80-year-old hold a stick. But God takes the foolish things of the world and he uses them to glorify himself, doesn't he? What these men did in part, God does in full. In this last week, where were you weak? And where did God show up? Where did he move? How did he sustain you? If you are here this morning, it's because God sustained you. And there's this song that I've been listening to recently. It's from when I was in college, where I started to walk with Jesus, and my life was utterly transformed. It's a simple, simple, simple song called "Breathe." And the words are this: "This is the air I breathe, your holy presence living in me. This is my daily bread, your very word spoken to me." And the chorus is, I'm desperate for you, and I'm lost without you. That's still my reality today. Without God, I have no hope in my life. But with God, I have all the hope in the world. Because he says generous things like, "Cast your anxieties upon me, because I care for you." He says things like, "Do you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not grow tired or weary, and his understanding no one can fathom. He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Even youths grow weary and tired, and young men stumble and fall, but those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." It was one of the verses my mom had us read. Because it's so deeply true. And we're so apt to say, "No, I'm not weak. No, I'm not weary. No, I don't need anything or anyone." But if we say that, the Bible doesn't really have good news for us. The Bible is only for the weak and weary. And such is what we are. And how does God do it? He does it through a mediator. He did it through Moses, didn't he? There's one God and one mediator between God and man, the man Jesus, Christ Jesus, who gave himself as a ransom for all, which is the testimony given at the proper time. God's pattern is to rescue us from chaos through a mediator. That's what this story teaches us. God always rescues us through a mediator. And that mediator has come. He came. This story says Jesus is the true one who stands between us and utter desolation. That if we fell into our sin fully, we'd never make it. But Jesus too climbed a hill to fight a battle, the hill called Golgotha. And he too held wood, carrying his cross until he was too weak. And Simon of Cyrene carried it for him. He looked around and he saw all physical benefits fleeing from him. He saw a few that stayed, his mother, some women, John, that comforted him. And in his last moment, when darkness covered the land, in the chaos of battle, he could have cried out to angels to rescue him. Instead, he called out to God, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Why? Because he loves us. Because he fought the battle for us and he conquered the true enemy, our sin. And that's what we celebrate with communion. We remember and we celebrate the reality that the battle has been won, that the mediator has come and he's rescued us. That the bread is his body, which was whipped and torn up all night, given no rest for us. And his blood is the blood of the new covenant, which allows us to come near to God. So as deacons, I want you to come forward and we'll take the elements. And so we'll pass out the bread and the juice and just hold it and think of what he's done for you. Think of your need for him. And so take some time to pray, to remember what he's done. Take some time to breathe. Song that was just playing. Chorus says, "Oh, praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life up from the dead." That we are united with Jesus in his death and in his resurrection. And that's what communion is for, to help us remember that is in our weakness and God's strength that we find life. So take the bread and remember and eat. Take the cup of the new covenant, and drink. We'll continue to worship, so if you want to stand and join us in singing about the reality of Jesus' sacrifice for us.